Auburn versus Vanderbilt. Are we ready to see a different result from the Tigers? We'll see. Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Rapport. I am your guy, Ike Jones. We are here talking Auburn versus Vanderbilt, and I have the pleasure of talking with Billy Derrick, who is with Vandy 247. He definitely knows way more about the Vanderbilt Commodores than I could ever pretend to know. So glad to have you here on the program. How you doing today, man? Things are nice in Nashville these days when it comes to football, right?
Yeah, they are. This is a rarity, Ike. I appreciate the time. I mean, for Vanderbilt football fans, this has never happened. So, you talk about a rarity. It's been an awesome season. Obviously, 7-2, and last weekend was tough. But I think if you told a Vanderbilt fan they'd be sitting at 7-2, with 4 games left, on 3 games left actually. So that's a pretty good spot to be in, and on the doorstep of the college football playoff and road losses to Alabama and Texas. Not a bad season for Vanderbilt football. Honestly, probably the best in the history of the program, at least so far.
It's looking really good right now in Nashville. This weekend, the Auburn Tigers are making the trip to Nashville. Last time that Auburn made that trip didn't go so well for the Commodores, but it's a new day and age. Clark Lee has the team humming right now. Diego Pavia is one of the talks of college football. Talk to me a little bit about what this Vanderbilt offense has been this season for those that don't know.
Yeah, they've been one of the more efficient offenses, not just in the SEC, but in the country. And I know some of that is aided by some poor competition. Teams like Charleston Southern, obviously Georgia State thrown in there. But you look at the non-conference, they went to Virginia Tech and Blacksburg and essentially got Brent Pry fired. Obviously LSU comes to Nashville a few weeks back. They get Brian Kelly fired, and not just Vanderbilt's doing, but big parts of that. And I think what separates this Vanderbilt offense is the deception. It is hard to predict, almost impossible to predict what this team is going to do, play in, play out. I mean, they run sections of the triple option, but they could be in the shotgun and have 2 running backs in the backfield and end up throwing the ball. I mean, right. Some of the formations they throw at you just don't see. Nowadays in college football, obviously with Auburn, there's a lot of read option. A lot of it is from the gun. Vanderbilt will go under center occasionally as well too. And so they've got more talent, but I think what it is just getting used to the system. Tim Beck coming over from New Mexico State, they knew they had to run that system with Diego Pavia, and he comes over to Vanderbilt. Well, they're not going to switch much, but they do have some better athletes than New Mexico State had. And last year they were getting their footing, and Diego was sort of getting the handle of playing consistently in the SEC. He was banged up late in the season last year. I think this year what separates them is the offensive line. And yes, they've struggled, especially in pass protection. The Texas D-line really got after Vanderbilt last week, and the Missouri D-line a couple of weeks ago really got after this unit as well. But they're based around the run game. When they're running the football and Diego Pavia is having success and he's carrying the football frequently, this team is rolling. But when they can't establish the run, like a lot of teams, but Vanderbilt, they're not comfortable in 3rd and 10. Right. I know most offenses aren't, but their bread and butter is 3 yards on first down, 3 yards on second down, and set up a 3rd and short. When they're living in 3rd and short, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, they're feeling good. But when they're living in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, Pavia is not necessarily comfortable in that situation when the defense knows he's going to throw the football. So to me, Ike, it's the offensive line. They've been able to establish the run. They're obviously banged up right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially on Saturday against Auburn. But they're a run-first offense. They can be explosive at times, and I do think they need to do a little bit more up-tempo because they showed against Texas their ability to come back, when they utilize their up-tempo style. But guys like Eli Stowers obviously have helped a guy that's going to be in the NFL, I think, for several years. They've got a couple of running backs in Cedric Alexander and MK Young, who MK Young was actually on the New Mexico State team. Of course, you go back a few years, who beat Auburn. And, receiver-wise, they're not they may not have an NFL guy, but they work within the offense. And so it's just guys that fit the system, and they've been able to be mostly successful. We'll see, of course, what happens on Saturday against a really good Auburn defense.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? So you've got a team that their bread and butter is running the football, going up against a team in Auburn who right now, looking at the statistics, giving up 83.6 rush yards per game, one of the stingiest rush defenses in college football this season. How are you feeling about that matchup between, an obviously stingy rush defense versus a team that needs to be able to run the football?
Yeah, it don't feel great. You look back at the last couple games. If I'm DJ Durkin, I'm living in that Missouri and Texas film, and Auburn's defense is not much different. I mean, you mentioned it, and I was talking to one of my Auburn buddies last night. He mentioned how Auburn statistically is right up there with Ohio State and Indiana when it comes to defense. I think run defense specifically, right, like you mentioned. So that matchup, I don't feel great about. But I think for Vanderbilt, if the offensive line can get by, can give Pavia another second or two on some of those plays. And a lot of what they do, Ike, too, is they may be in a pass play, but the offensive line creates a rush lane for Diego, and right. he finds room. I think if you're the Auburn defensive line, you have to prevent those rush lanes from opening up. That's what Texas was able to do. Missouri was able to do that for the most part. If you go back and watch that LSU game, they left way too many rush lanes for Pavia. There was a play where it didn't even look like they had a spy on him, and Pavia runs free into the end zone. So that's where he's dangerous on getting outside of the pocket. If Auburn can contain him and bracket him, I know they'll be double teaming Stowers. That Vandy's got another tight end in Cole Spence who likes to slip out of the backfield as well. That's no secret. They had success with that against LSU. So to me, I look at the matchup. I don't like it, but it's not like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt can be in 3rd and 10. They could still convert and be creative. It's just a lot tougher. So I think for their offensive line, if they aren't creating those rush lanes, not just for the running backs, but I think Pavia, the ball's in his hands every play. So when he takes that snap, if he sees a rush lane, whether it's a pass play or that's supposed to be a deep ball or a corner route, he's going to take that rush lane. So to me, I'll be watching those specifically. One of my partners in the booth, Chris Lee, likes to have binoculars and watch the line of scrimmage when Vanderbilt's on offense to see if those lanes are created. If they are, Vanderbilt's typically having success. If they're not, then this is an offense that can be shut down. And so I'll be interested. I don't love the matchup for Vanderbilt, to be quite honest. I think this is going to be a pretty low scoring game. And I think it could look a lot like the Missouri game. So I think you look at Vanderbilt's defense against Auburn's offense. I think that could be the matchup to watch here in this game.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that because listen, hasn't been very much offense to talk about in terms of the Auburn Tigers this year. And you're coming up against a Vanderbilt defense that is only giving up 334 yards per game right now, only surrendering 20.4 points per game. Right now, I think Auburn fans would love to get 20 points in a game with the way this offense has been performing. Talk to me about the standouts of what makes this Vanderbilt defense so good this year.
Yeah, so they've been a lot better up front. Guys on the edge like Corday Sidner and Miles Capers, they've been able to get after the quarterback outside of really last week against Texas. And then you go back to the Alabama game that they were not really able to get a whole lot of pressure. But they've been able to get pressure on the quarterback, and that has helped their secondary. Now, a weakness for this defense is the screen game. And Clark said that going into the Texas game last week. He said, look, we have not been great when it comes to some of those short passes in the screen game. We haven't been great on the perimeter in the boundary. That's no secret. I mean, I think you watch Vanderbilt's defense when screens are executed against them, it's hard for them. They don't have the same level of athletes as a Texas. And when you look at this Auburn offense with Cam Coleman and Singleton and some of those other guys, they can have success. Now, can Daniels execute? Can they give him time to make a quick throw? Can they block on the edge? If Auburn can, this could get interesting. And I think, again, if you're Durkin and you're Derek Nix, who is going to be calling the plays, he's going to be the sole play caller. I'm, again, throwing on that Texas tape. Alabama didn't do as much of it, but Texas, first play of the game, if you go back and watch, a 75-yard screen pass to Ryan Wingo. If I'm Auburn, I am working all week on a couple of screen packages. But on the other side, Vanderbilt's doing the same. They're doing anything they can to stop those screen plays. But I think that'll open some things up for Auburn. A lot of times in football in these matchups, like, and if you're Derek Nix, I think you're also watching some of the ISO, runs up the middle, because Vandy may be prepared to be on the outside in some of those halfback draws. I think with is Cobb healthy? Is he playing?
Yeah, Jeremiah Cobb will be healthy and playing in this game. Yes,
but Alston is not.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Alston is officially not with the team right now.
Okay, so I think Cobb in this game specifically, this is a unique week. I think we could see some running back draws and him see some success. But the defense, look, they've been opportunistic. They're not filled with NFL guys. Their secondary is susceptible to, like I said, plays on the perimeter. They've got a guy number 2, Randon Fontenette, who he hasn't been as dominant as he was last year. He was all over the field last year. They've got some good linebackers, Nick Rinaldi, Langston Patterson, Brian Longwell. So they've got depth, and they're fairly athletic. They're just not, they don't look like a Texas. They don't look like a Missouri on defense. And obviously they don't look like Auburn's defense. They're physical, but again, they're susceptible on the edges. That is what I'm watching this game. Can Auburn execute offensively to get some of those quick throws out, block for a couple of seconds? Because Auburn's receivers, again, I favor them on the edge against Vanderbilt. It'll just be interesting to see if Vanderbilt can force some turnovers.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting seeing what a Derek Nix offense looks like. This will be the first time we'll get that opportunity as Auburn fans, really as anyone around the country, to see what does a Derek Nix offense look like. So you don't really have an element of predictability with that. So I do wonder, the defensive staff, Clark Lee, no longer the primary play caller on defense, but definitely still heavily involved in the game planning. Like, how do you even game plan for this? Because you don't know really. Yeah. I mean, you can take some of the staples that you're seeing, I guess, from what you saw previous to now, and then maybe look at some Ole Miss film and say, okay, maybe but it just feels like you don't have the first clue. I think this is going to be, it's going to be a testament, I think, to their ability to adjust on the fly if they start throwing some stuff out there and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, we haven't seen them. And it's really more down and distance stuff, right? Like, it's not necessarily, I mean, blocking schemes are blocking schemes. If you're running, a trap, or if you're running, power, like, it's the same stuff. But what do they call on 3rd and 4? What do they call in the red zone? And how do you match up against those sorts of things? I know Clark Lee is big on, we're just going to be who we are, but you still have to be able to have a level of, this is what I'm comfortable in versus this look type of thing. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out as the game progresses.
Yeah, that's a tough prep. I mean, I think this would be a tough prep for most defensive staffs in the country. And look, this Auburn offense, you go back to the Kentucky game, obviously, put up 3 points, but a lot of it was Daniels in that run game. And, look, I think if you're Vanderbilt's defense, they've sent pressure. They've sent a lot of pressure. Their pressure packages, they like to disguise blitzes. So I think that'll be interesting, like you said, in the red zone. If we got a 3rd and 4 in the red zone, how much pressure is Vandy bringing? Or are they sitting back more and just sort of waiting and seeing? That's what Texas did. Texas did that against Vanderbilt's offense, and they had success. And you can have success like that against Vanderbilt's offense. But like you said, we don't have much to go off of when it comes to this Derek Nix offense. But you've got the guys in place to match up against a Vanderbilt defense. So to me, this game, Auburn has the players. Right. Can they execute? I think if Auburn executes in this game, they can win the game, because it's going to be a slugfest, I think. But I will be really interested. I think Clark Lee and this defense know they have to force turnovers. They have to create havoc. And what they do, they bend, but they don't break, like a lot of defenses, I think now. They will give up yards. This could be a game where Auburn finds some yards and they find space on offense.
Could be a field goal fest.
Exactly. I could see this 17-14, 2017 with a lot of field goals. And I think both defenses play that style. And so that's why I think the margins are going to be really small, and who can force that big turnover, right? Who can create that in order to create momentum? I think it'll be a close to 50-50 crowd. Auburn always travels in Nashville. So I think the fans will certainly play a role as well. So it's going to be interesting because, again, we don't have a whole lot to go off of with Derek Nix and even DJ Durkin. How much does he ramp it up as well?
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to come down to, as it does in a lot of games, the line of scrimmage. Auburn's offensive line didn't look very good versus Kentucky. Did not look very good versus Texas A&M. Didn't look very good versus Oklahoma, right? Like, I can rattle it off, outside of the Arkansas game. This offensive line has not performed well. At times versus Missouri, they looked good, but just have not had a consistency of play from the Auburn offensive line. Can Vanderbilt either overwhelm, from a sheer numbers standpoint / confusion, or line it up in physicality standpoint. Can they overwhelm that Auburn offensive line? Doesn't really matter what the play call is if you can't block it up. So I think that's going to probably be the recipe for success. If I'm Vanderbilt, overwhelm them, make them figure it out. If you give up a big play, okay, but are they going to be able to hit the next one? Right. So that's what I would be doing if I'm the defensive coordinator. And we will see what the strategy is going to be for Vanderbilt. I think that's more of their style anyway. So it's going to be interesting to see how Derek Nix crafts some things to get over maybe some of the perceived deficiencies that they have in the blocking game.
We always want to shout out our sponsors, and we encourage our listeners to support our sponsors. That includes AIMA Associates. I know what some of you might think. I don't have enough money for a financial advisor, or maybe it hasn't crossed your mind at all. But the truth is, nearly everyone can benefit from financial guidance. The best part, there's no upfront costs. Abel's Iannone Moore and Associates offer an initial consultation so you can see if they're the right fit for your needs. It's not just about investing. It's about creating a plan that gives you flexibility and helps you build wealth over time for yourself and your family. Call Abel's Iannone Moore and Associates at 912-777-4128 or visit AIMC.com. I'm confident you'll be glad you did. Guys, I can't stress enough, you don't need $1 million to need a financial advisor. You just need a paycheck and some dreams and some goals, or somebody that you care about that you want to provide for, and these guys can help you. The War Rapport has been compensated by Abel's Iannone Moore and Associates for this endorsement. AIMA Associates is a registered investment advisor. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The information in this advertisement is for informational purposes only and should not be considered personalized investment advice. All investing involves risks. That includes the loss of potential principal, and past performance is not indicative of future results.
We're in here talking Auburn versus Vanderbilt coming up this weekend there in Nashville. Again, a lot of storylines developing. Vanderbilt on the precipice of being eligible for the college football playoff. In the national championship conversation, something that Vanderbilt fans have not been able to say for a very long time, especially in this new world of college football playoff. They now really are sitting on the doorstep of that. And in the way are the Auburn Tigers coming to town. I'm sitting here looking at the injury report, right, for Vanderbilt. And, it's not that I don't look at this every week, so forgive me. But is there anybody who is on this report that's new that would be someone of note? Or is everyone who is on this report someone who they've been out for a while and Vanderbilt's kind of gotten used to their absence?
Yeah, so really the only one is Dante Carter. He's a reserve safety for Vanderbilt. And I don't think that's huge for them. Really all year they've been relatively healthy. And so I think that's obviously been a good thing. They have a defensive lineman, Issa Wataha, who's on it, but he's been on it really for most of the season. He played in the Virginia Tech game and sort of re-injured, when I think it was lower body somewhat, but Vanderbilt's been relatively healthy. I think losing, if Carter doesn't play, I think that would hurt them somewhat, but they've got enough depth defensively that I think they'll be able to hold serve. And luckily, look, Pavia is not 100%. I think we can agree on that right now. And look, in that Auburn game last year, he was not 100% either. Vanderbilt somehow found a way to win that game. It could look very similar, I think. And Stowers down the stretch wasn't healthy last year. Cedric Alexander wasn't healthy. Luckily, those guys are healthier now. And Vanderbilt has done a lot in terms of maintaining health for their guys throughout the rest of the season. And Clark Lee was not happy with the way last season ended in terms of the wear and tear. Pavia, I don't think is 100%. We'll see how that affects him. I wouldn't expect him to burst out a 50-yard touchdown. In that Alabama game earlier this year, he had like a 33-yard run. I don't even know if he was fully healthy there. So luckily, nobody of note for Vanderbilt that I think will impact the game.
Yeah, I mean, for Auburn, Elijah Melendez, the linebacker, he has been a good rotational piece up front. Questionable for this game. He was in concussion protocol, if I'm not mistaken, likely will not play. Champ Anthony, one of the starting safeties for Auburn, is ruled out for the remainder of the season, not just this game, so he'll be done. Connor Gibbs has been dealing with something for the last few weeks. Unlikely that he's going to play in this game. Brandon Frazier, the tight end. The tight end room hasn't performed particularly well, but he has been one of the better tight ends in that room. questionable for the game. And then Jordan Crawford, a rotational piece freshman along the defensive line, is also listed as questionable for this game. I would expect Crawford to be able to potentially go. Brandon Frazier, not sure what the extent of the injury is. He may give it a go. I don't know how healthy he's going to be because he has been banged up the last few weeks. And again, I would doubt Connor Gibbs or Elijah Melendez actually play in this game. But I do think that Auburn's got enough depth at linebacker to be able to deal with some of that stuff, and Connor Gibbs being the kicker. Speaking of kickers, let's talk about the third phase of the game and the special teams unit for Vanderbilt. How has that been in the kicking game and in the return game so far this season?
Yeah, so Brock Taylor has been really solid for Vanderbilt. He did miss a pretty big kick last week that, look, I hate saying this when a kicker misses a kick and it's so easy to go back. Oh, we could be in overtime right now, but I've never really fully bought into that. So he missed a big kick last week. He did hit one. He was 1 for 1 last week. But prior to that, he had hit 17 in a row, something to that effect. So this is one of the better kickers in the league. I think he's up there in the country in terms of just pure strength. He before the season, he said that his goal line was like 58, I think is what he said. So he's got some strength, and I think he's going to play a role. I will tell you that right now, that both kickers, when obviously you look at Auburn, you mentioned Auburn's with Gibbs. That's a big questionable. You got to, if you're Auburn, you'd like him to go, and it sounds like he will give it a go. And then same thing for Brock Taylor. He's fully healthy and he's a really solid kicker. So both of those guys will come into play. In terms of the return game, Trey Richardson has had some really good kick returns. He hasn't busted one out for a touchdown yet, but I think sort of his time is coming. I'm not going to sit here and say he'll return one back against Auburn, but he's helped Vanderbilt field position wise, where he may set you up at midfield or at the 45 and set you up really well. That's been an advantage for Vanderbilt. So he's been solid in the kick return game. Punt return, Martell Height, he returned a few back for a touchdown last year. He hasn't gotten, when you get found out, when you get figured out as a punt returner in the SEC, right, you're going to get shut down more times than not. And that's kind of happened with him. He hasn't been able to break loose. He's had some solid returns like Trey Richardson, but both guys are really good athletes. Richardson's got some legit speed. Same with Martell Height. And so again, punt return, kick return, field position. I mean, we're going to go back into the 70s for this game here, especially with all the field goal kicks I think we could have. So Vandy's really solid in special teams. And I think if you're Brock Taylor, I don't know if you can afford a missed kick in this game if you're Vanderbilt.
Field position was so crucial last year in this game. I felt like Vandy's punter was pinning Auburn inside the 10 consistently in that game. Same thing happened really versus Kentucky. It felt as if every time got a little momentum, defense shuts them down around midfield, the punter hits one and they're down inside the 5 there. And so that's, I think, going to be a big thing of like whose team is able to play those hidden yards that you talk about with special teams, being able to get the good return or getting the good punt pinned down or something like that. Have your defense flip the field a little bit for you are going to be super important in this game. So that's something I'm going to be paying extra special attention to. It's just kind of that war of inches that is field position for this game. All right, let's get to the brass tacks of it. When it comes down to it, somebody's got to win the game. Won't necessarily ask you for a score prediction because I don't know that it's predictable with the way that this Auburn offense is completely confounding right now. But I will say this, I'll ask it to you this way. Outside of the score, of course, Vanderbilt wins this game. Circle for me a couple of things on the stat sheet that you're going to look at and say, if you told me at the beginning of the game, Vandy does this and this on the stat sheet, they're walking out of there with a victory. What things are you looking at most for both the offense and defense for Vanderbilt?
For the offense, and I think this is the case for every game, for Vanderbilt's offense, rushing attempts. That's a huge one. You go back to the win over Alabama last year, Vanderbilt had over 40 rushing attempts. Go back to their win over LSU. I think it was around 30. When they are winning, they're running the ball. They're running the ball a lot. They're establishing the run, not just with the running backs, but with Pavia, with some of the end arounds. So I look at not even the yardage because, yardage will be huge. I mean, they could have awful yards per carry, but I think the rushing attempts, and you can throw the yardage in there, but rushing attempts, when they are running the ball a lot, that means they're typically converting and they're setting themselves up on first and second downs. So for the offense, I'll say the rush attempts. And then for the defense, turnovers. Look, I think if Vanderbilt can force even one turnover, that could be enough to give them the edge. Now, turnovers they can be timely. They could be, unnecessary. If it's an early turnover, like an interception or a fumble, late in the first quarter, something like that, that doesn't really matter. But if Vandy gets a second half turnover that flips the field, I think that could really tell the story of the game. So on offense, rushing attempts, the running game, and then defensively for Vanderbilt, can they force a turnover? And if they force multiple, I'd be comfortable picking Vandy to win. But Auburn could do the same. If they get pressure on Pavia, I think the turnovers for both sides, who wins the turnover margin, and that's cliche, but I don't think time of possession is as important this year for Vanderbilt. I think it was very even against Missouri. It was pretty even last week against Texas, and they lost a close one. So I'll go away from time of possession. I'll say turnovers, and then on offense, they're rushing attempts, because like I said, when they're able to establish the run, they've been able to win games.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's going to be yards per rush for Auburn. I think if they're getting some quality, I don't know if it's the rush attempts, but I think quality rushing yards for Auburn is going to be important for this offense to stay ahead of the chains. And then on the defensive side, I think it's going to be, getting into third and long scenarios and converting as a defense, right? Because that's really been a bugaboo for this Auburn defense, if we're being honest and looking at it, is they've been a pretty good first and second down defense, and then they get in third and long and they give up too many yards, where if it's close enough to midfield, teams will go for it on fourth down. This has been not just this year, last year as well, or teams are converting on third and long. So they're keeping drives extended. So you're playing more downs on defense than necessary when you could have just gotten off of the field. Those are going to be the key things for me is, are you getting into third and long scenarios, and what's your conversion rate on that for Auburn? If they're doing a good job in those two areas, I feel confident saying that Auburn has an opportunity to win. Again, this is not knowing anything about what this offense is going to look like, because I don't have the first clue. I can have a bunch of wild imaginations of what I hope it would be, but don't know what a Derek Nix offense is going to look like. And that's going to be the thing that compels me as I'm sitting here watching this game, trying to determine what we're seeing there. All right. Well, listen, great conversation. I appreciate all of the insight on Vandy from you. If people want to keep up with what you all have going on over there with the Commodores, where can they find you, Billy?
Yeah, we've got pregame coverage tomorrow. We'll have a pregame show out tomorrow. We've got a couple of podcasts out. If you want to hear the Vanderbilt perspective as well, you can head on over to our YouTube channel. Just search Vandy 24/7. Log on to Vandy247.com. Also, you can find me on Twitter. We'll have something out with Mike as well on y'all's end, and my Twitter, Billy Derrick 10. So looking forward to it. It's always fun when these two get together. I think it's funny that this series is tied 22-1. And so something weird typically happens. And I know last time Auburn came to Nashville, it was not pretty. And that's the game that started a lot of this, when Vanderbilt loses to Auburn, and then Clark Lee turns around and watches New Mexico State beat Auburn. And he said, hey, give me some of that. So we'll see if they can do it again, minus Hugh Freeze. It'll be fun.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze seems to be the common denominator between teams losing to Diego Pavia and the New Mexico State Brain Trust. So we'll see if the fortunes change minus Hugh Freeze in the equation. But all of that will get sorted out on Saturday afternoon. You guys have been watching us right here on the Auburn Express, powered by the War Rapport. You know what you need to be doing right now if you're watching this on YouTube, liking the video, subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and share the content with somebody. If you're out there on podcasts, give us that 5-star review. You know we love those sorts of things, and we appreciate all of that. We'll be back at you guys with game day coverage leading up to the matchup between Auburn and Vanderbilt. But that's it. We're out of here. Until the next time, and as always,